Señor Presidente, Cuba ha abogado.
Mr. President, Cuba has always advocated for and worked toward a Human Rights Council capable of facing the challenges of the international community in this area. No country is exempt. We defend the objectivity, impartiality, and transparency in the work of that body. Its procedures and mechanisms should work on the basis of true information. The use of the clause on suspension of membership in the Council will not favor finding a peaceful, lasting, and negotiated solution to the conflict in Ukraine. It will not promote the dialogue and understanding which should be prevalent in human rights issues. Only a few days after concluding a regular session of the Human Rights Council, that body was not even given the opportunity to state its position. Mr. President, since the start of the negotiating process on the building of the new council that would follow the Human Rights Commission, Cuba opposed the clause on suspension of membership, given the serious risk that it could be used by specific countries which favor a double standard, selectivity, and politicization of human rights issues. That clause can be activated with the support of only 2/3 of those present and voting. Therefore, abstentions do not count, and there's not even a minimum established of votes required for approving suspension. To be elected a member of the Human Rights Council, a country needs to obtain as a minimum in a secret ballot the support of the majority of the members of the United Nations, that is to say, at least 97 votes. Thus, the rights of a member of the Council can be suspended by the will of a number of states lower than the number of states which granted those rights. The Russian Federation, which was elected as a member of the Human Rights Council in 2020 with 158 votes, could be suspended today by a lower number of votes. That suspension mechanism, which has no parallel in any other body of the United Nations, could be easily used selectively. It is Russia today, but tomorrow it could be any of our countries, especially nations of the South, which do not support the interests of domination and which firmly defend their independence. It was not by chance that the more enthusiastic promoters of the suspension clause, when negotiating the new Human Rights Council, were developed nations with a clear trend to accuse countries of the South which do not follow their alleged models of democracy while remaining silent in the case of flagrant violations in Western countries. Not everyone in this hall share our concerns about the suspension mechanism. They know that the victims of its selective use will always be others. Could this assembly someday adopt a resolution suspending the membership of the United States in the Human Rights Council? Just to give one example. We all know that that has not happened, nor will it, despite its flagrant and massive violations of human rights as a result of invasions and wars against sovereign states, given its geopolitical interests. They have caused the deaths of hundreds of millions of civilians, which they term collateral damage. There have been millions of displaced people and destruction throughout our planet. But this assembly has never suspended any of its rights. We also all know that the suspension clause will not be used against the state that has imposed against Cuba for over 60 years a criminal economic, trade, and financial blockade, which no doubt constitutes the longest and most flagrant and systematic violation of human rights of an entire people, and an example of genocide against a country. It is ironic to note that the country which opposed the establishment of the Human Rights Council and requested in this same hall a vote against the resolution establishing it is the same one that has conveniently now activated, as it did in 2011, one of the most controversial clauses. Mr. President, Cuba will will be consistent with the reservations when in 2006 Resolution 60/251 establishing the Human Rights Council and 65/265 of 2011 on the suspension of the rights of Libya. Adoption of the draft resolution we are considering today will establish a dangerous additional precedent, especially for the South. It is not sufficient to impose resolutions against selective countries and mandates. Now they are trying to take a new step toward legitimizing selectivity and establishing a Human Rights Council, which is increasingly at the service of a certain number of countries, as was the case with the discredited Human Rights Commission. For all of these reasons, the Cuban delegation will vote against the draft resolution contained in document L4. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Cuba.